So here, this is another important section in the use of a research, because after conducting a research, we will be getting some data or some findings. That findings we have to publish in some journal, some book, etc. That aspect is known as a research report writing. Normally, when we are undertaking a research, at the end of our research work, we will have some findings, some major observations will be there. And normally, we will be publishing this observation in certain scientific journal. And that is known by the name of the research article or a research paper or a scientific paper. So here we will be discussing what are the major steps in the use of a scientific paper. What are the major portions in a scientific paper? Writing a research report or a scientific paper requires clarity, organization, adherence to standardized format. There are three areas are there. Clarity means what we are going to say. It should be very clear. I have some findings with me, but if I am not very sure about what are my major findings, then my observation is not clear. Second is that organization. That is, we have to organize it in a particular way, then only another person may be able to understand that. We may be knowing a lot of things. For example, you saw a cinema, a film, and if you want to tell the story of that film to someone, you have to present it in such a way. That is known as organizing your thought. Then standardized format, that is generally an accepted pattern will be there or a format will be there that has to be followed. Scientific paper follow a specific structure to communicate research finding, and that specific structure is what we are going to discuss now. Normally in a scientific paper there will be a title, an abstract, introduction, methods, result, discussion, conclusion and reference. These are the major paragraphs or major headings in the use of a scientific paper. We will take one by one. Now in a scientific paper it starts with the title. Title is the first element readers see and should provide a concise and accurate description of the research. For example, a study on the birds of Kumaragam, bird sanctuary. So that is a title. So by reading the title, a person may be interested if he has an interest in birds, or if he has an interest in Kumaragam Bird Sanctuary, he may be reading it. Now normally at the end of the Kumaragam Bird Sanctuary, we will be also putting Kerala. So if that person is interested in the biodiversity of Kerala, he again may be reading that. So that is how normally we will be putting. It should reflect the focus on the study. What we have mainly done on the study, what are the key variables, what are the major differences or under investigation and the main findings if possible. So for example, a study on the bird diversity in Kumaragam Bird Sanctuary in Kerala. If somebody is reading that title, he may be able to understand that. If I am going to read this paper, I will be able to understand, or I will be able to know what are the major species of birds present in Kumaragam as well as in other parts of Kerala. So that is a clue to the major findings is already there. A good title captures the essence of the research. What is mainly done in the research is actually presented in one or two lines. That is essence, the main idea of the research, while being clear and specific. So the title has to be impressive. It should make the reader read more. For example, the first thing anybody, for example, when you are hearing about a film, what is the first thing that you are knowing? It's a title. The title of the film is not attractive, not impressive. There is little chance that you may be going to bother more about that film. So title is a very important thing. So while preparing the title, it should be very clear and it should be concise. Concise means very brief, very short. A very lengthy title is always difficult. Then avoid scientific or too much jargon. Jargon means highly technical term. Overlay complex language. As far as possible, title is something everybody tries to read. So make the title as simple as possible. A highly technical title with a lot of scientific words may not be appealing to all other readers. Then include key terms relevant to research. For example, in the use of Kumaragam bird, what is a major thing? Bird diversity. That's a key term. Kumaraga, that is a key term. So these are the major aspects which has to be included in a title. Then comes the second aspect. So second aspect is an abstract. We can also call it as a summary. Abstract is a summary of the entire study, typically between 150 to 300 words. So there is a word limit for the abstract. We cannot make an abstract of 2 pages. Normally an abstract will be 1 paragraph or half a page of an A4 paper. That is a maximum that is allowed. So maximum we can use only 300 words. That is the normal normally accepted norm. It serves to give the readers a quick overview of the research, helping them determine whether the paper is relevant to the interest. Even if you are studying zoology. In zoology there are different branches. For example, I am doing a research on spider. Just because I am doing a research on spider, all kinds of different types of research work that has been undertaken in spider may not be interesting to me, because I am mainly focusing on the classification of taxonomy or morphology of spider. Sometimes when we go to research conferences, that will be a conference on spider, but still they may be presenting some physiological data, or they may be presenting some genetical data, about which I may not have much interest or much knowledge. So this is the problem in any scientific paper. By simply going through the scientific summary of the paper, we should be able to give a quick idea of what our research was, what are the major points that will be discussed in that research. So abstract should include objective or purpose of the study. In a good abstract, we have to mention the objective or purpose of the study, then a brief idea, maybe in 1 or 2 methods. For example, you have been using for bird diversity or Kumaragam, you may be doing visual observation, daily or field observation. If that is that field observation, that sentence should be there. Then key findings. For example, from Kumaragam, we have found 150 species of bird. So that has to be mentioned in that summary. So that are the key findings. And conclusion. Conclusion may be your observation, maybe you may be indicating that even though I could only find 150 species of birds, there is a possibility that more species or double the number of the species may be present in this sanctuary. So that is a conclusion. So there is a possibility of a scientific gap. So that is known as a conclusion or implication. It is written in past tense. That is an important thing. When we are writing a scientific paper, we are not using present tense, we are using past, because it is something that is already completed. As the research has already been completed, abstract should be a stand-alone summary, not requiring the reader to the reader to reference other sections of the paper. That is, by simply reading the abstract, the reader should be able to understand what are the main aspects which we'll be discussing in this paper. You don't need to turn the pages and see in the result this is in the methodology. That should not be we should not compel the reader into that. By simply reading the abstract, the main event, the main idea should be the reader should be able to understand the main idea or main findings of the paper. Third aspect is the introduction. Introduction sets the context for the research, why we have conducted this research. That is the main aspect, and present the problem and study, why I have undertaken a study on the bird diversity of Kumaragam. There are many people who have conducted similar study. Then why my study is relevant? So that aspect we have to explain. It explains why research is important, provides a review of relevant literature, outlines a research question or hypothesis. Why I have been conducting this research. That aspect we have to mention. Then in the introduction, background information. Background information normally means the previous research workers or work may be discussing, literature review, what are the other people who have been working on this area, what are the major publications on Kumaragam Bird Sanctuary before, research question, what I am going to undertake during my study, state the specific research question or hypothesis study aims to test. Maybe in the introduction you may be mentioning, so far only 100 species of birds, birds are only discovered from Kumaragam Bird Sanctuary. There is a possibility that another 100 species may be present. So that is our hypothesis. So that is what we are going to test. Objective, outline the goals of the study, what I am going to study, how many species of birds, which are the major families of birds present here, and are there migratory birds or non-migratory birds. So these are the objectives of the study. So introduction provides a rationale. Rationale means a logic, a rationale for the study and set the stage for methods and findings. So in the introduction, we are clearly mentioning why this study is important, why I am undertaking this study, what are the previous works done in this area, or we will be presenting a history of bird studies or bird diversity studies in Kumaragam. So that way, we will be providing a background information about our research problem. Then fourth aspect is the methods, or sometimes this is also known as materials and method. Both terms are used interchangeably. This section describes the experimental or research procedures used in the study. It should be detailed enough that other researchers could replicate the study based on the information. Replicate means repeat. For example, you have undertaken a study on birds of Kumaragam. Now another person from another parts of the world or another part of India, he or she may be interested and they want to conduct same study in the same area. Then it should be possible that it should be possible for them to do your study in the exactly similar way that you have undertaken and test the accuracy of your study. So that is why it should replicate. It should be given enough information. Then what are the key components of the material? One is study design. Outline the type of study, whether it is an experimental study or observational study. For example, in the field biodiversity study, mostly it will be observational study or a qualitative study. That is how much or how that kind of terms. For example, in case of hematological studies, some of the studies may be qualitative. Then some are actually questionnaire type of will be there. For example, if you want to study about the heart attack, prevalence of heart attack, you may be using a questionnaire. So that is the type of study: experimental, observational, qualitative. So that is the type of study. Then participant, describe the population or sample, including inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, or any other demographic information. For example, in case of bird diversity of Kumaragam, you are studying only during 3 months. You are not making an entire study. So, for example, January to March, that is your study period. But there is a possibility that in December season, some migratory birds from another part of the world may be coming to Kumaragam. How can you include that? Because during your study, it is limited to 3 months. So this is some problem. So that is why certain months certain things to be included, certain things to be. For example, we can clearly mention that migratory birds are not included in this study. So there is an inclusion or exclusion criteria. Another aspect is a material or equipment. List any tools, instruments, equipment used in the study. For example, in any scientific study, nowadays modern equipments are there. Normally, if you are doing a scientific study, you will be using camera. Our present camera is more advanced. Then most of the camera, if you take a photograph, immediately it will show the GPS location. By simply taking the camera, you are getting the GPS location. Nowadays, night vision cameras are there. If you install a camera like this, even at night you may be able to observe because all these cameras are with infrared vision. So even at night observation may be possible. So such kinds of equipment may be increasing the giving you more information or more data about the field area that you are going to work. Then, so this is an idea about what are the materials that you have used, equipment you have used. Then procedure, provide a step-by-step description of method used for data collection, including sampling techniques, data gathering, analyze method. For example, for the sampling techniques, you can do 24-hour sampling. But most people will not be doing 24-hour sampling. It is practically very, very difficult. Most of the people who are working on biodiversity, they may be going early in the morning, maybe 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then evening, some 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So you can clearly mention that this is the time when I have been conducting my study, where there is maximum possibility of finding birds. So how you are analyzing the data, what kind of software you have been using, and for this analyzing the data. Then statistical analysis. Explain the statistical method or software used for analyzing your data. Nowadays, presenting the data in a simple form may not be accepted. We have to present a lot of table, lot of graph, etc. So a statistical analysis is very much important in presenting the data. Then next part is the result section. Result is to present the data collected during the study, often accompanied by tables, graphs and chart. What is the purpose of providing table, graph and chart? To illustrate your data. So to illustrate your data with the help of images, you are using tables, you are using chart, etc. so that the reader will be more interested. So key elements of the result section is the data presentation, figure and narrative explanation. Data presentation, present raw data, descriptive statistics, mean, median, standard deviation. That could be provided in the inferential statistics, p-value, confidence interval. These are highly technical terms. Then figure and table, visual aids, chart, tables, graphs, etc. That will be increasing the clarity of the problem data. Then narrative description, briefly explain the data shown in the table or figures, but avoid interpreting or discussing the implication of the result. So in the result section, you are only presenting what you have found. You are not giving an explanation for that. Your inference for that. You found certain things and you are simply writing that this is my observation. And about that observation, you may have some belief or some opinion. That opinion you don't need to present there. That is why avoid interpreting or discussing the implication. That is not expected from the result section. It should be a raw data and presented in the same way. The result should be presented objectively. The objectively means your personal opinion should not be reflected there without discussing the significance of the finding, which is reserved for discussion section. You have some opinion that you should not present in the result section. That you can present only in the discussion section. Finally, discussion. Discussion is the interpretation of the result, where researchers explain what findings mean in the broader context of the research question. So that is a very important area, because when we are in the discussion, most of the time people will be mentioning what are their major opinions, what they think about their study, What are the gaps? What are the gaps they could not fill? What are the gaps which future researchers should focus on? All these they will be discussing in the discussion. That what they could achieve, what they could not achieve, all they will be presented in the discussion section. So discussion is an interpretation or explanation of the result, and is where researcher explain what findings mean in the broader context of the question. Discussion connects the result to the literature review. Because in the review of literature, you have been mentioning that only 100 species of birds have been found. Now in discussion, if you have in the result, you have found 150 species of birds. 50 is an extra, and about that extra, you will be giving a valid opinion, a valid explanation or your own opinion why how that 50 extra species is significant. So these are the important aspects which we will be discussing in the discussion section. Then we have what are the key components in the discussion. We have interpretation of the result. There is one aspect. Discuss the meaning of the result, how they answer the research question. Because in every research there is an important problem. So how many species of birds are present in Kumbharanam? That is the problem. So how much you are able to answer that problem, that will be presented, that will be discussed in the discussion section. Comparison with the previous research, that is what the previous workers were able to find, and all these will then relate that findings with your finding. So there should be a relation with the, so comparison with the previous research. Limitation, what you could not achieve, that you should mention. Limitations of your study, acknowledge any limitation of the study, such as sample size, methodology or other factor, maybe environmental factor. During your study it was heavy rain, most of the time there was flooding. All these could be limitations. So limitations of the study. Implication, highlight the significance of the findings for theory, practice, policy or future research. How your research can be used by forest department people, government official, biodiversity department or other people who are involved in, you are interested in the biodiversity. So what will be implication, significance of your research? Suggestion for future research. So what should be done by future researchers? Provide recommendation for future studies or further investigation based on studies limitation. Your study has been facing these major problems. So in future, you can mention that other researchers who have better finding, funding or more resources can focus on these aspects of the Kumbharanam Bird Sanctuary. So that these are the things which we will be discussing in the discussion section. Final part is the conclusion. About the conclusion is a brief summary of the main findings and the implication. That is, in the discussion and conclusion will be somewhat similar. In the discussion you are mentioning your opinion, but in the conclusion it's simply a very brief summary of the main findings and their implication. It should not introduce new data, but should emphasize the broader why this your study was very relevant. In a small paragraph you are stating summary of key findings. Restate the most important result. For example, you have found 150 species of bird. That sentence you can again repeat in the conclusion section. Then practical implication. What are the main use of your study? That also you can again mention. Future direction. In which what are the areas future, that is certain things that you have already presented either in introduction or in summary or in result, you are again presenting in a very one or two, three or four sentences. That will be forming the conclusion of your research paper. Then finally the reference section will be the reference section should be very clearly mentioned in APA, American Psychologists Association, MLA, Chicago. These are the three standardized format. There is, when you are writing a research, mentioning a paper, there is a certain way. For example, the name of the author. After that, there is a comma. After that, you are mentioning the year. then you are writing the title, then you are writing the journal name. Journal name sometimes most of the time will be mentioned in italics. Then how many, which volume, that should be done. Then how many pages. So all this, for everything there is a accepted norm. For each journal they will be following sometimes APA style, sometimes MLA style, sometimes IEE style. These are different styles used for citing the references. That should be very clearly, very accurately followed. That in-text citation, this should be correspond to full reference. For example, sometimes when you are reading your textbook, in the paragraph, there may be Matthew, bracket 1920. So that is known as an inside citation. And if you look at Matthew 1920 at the end of the book or end of the paper, you can find in which journal Matthew 1920 has been published. What was the major title of that study? So these are known as inside citation. Reference list. All cited works should be listed alphabetically. So that is or in a numerical order. Depending on sometimes some journals may be expecting you to list in an alphabetic order. That is the name of the author. If it is with Alfred name will come. Sometimes some other journal may be following chronological order. The first journal in which year, the year-wise pattern. So different patterns will be followed. For every journal they will be having their own pattern. So that is another big headache for the researchers. When we are publishing, we do not accurately follow this pattern, they will not accept your paper. So these are simple things, but at the same time very important for your research paper. Acknowledgement. In some paper, authors may acknowledge people, organization that contributed. Maybe at the very end of the research paper. For example, when we are publishing, we usually acknowledge. We are grateful to the principal of the Ummada College. He may not be directly involved, but still, because since he is the head of the institution, this institution has given us some facilities, some help. So we have to give a credit to that institution by mentioning the name of the, most of the time we will be mentioning the name of the principal. So that is known as acknowledgement, because if principal says that you don't need to do this study here, then our research is over. So principal, they may not have given any direct support, indirectly they have been giving some support. It is because of that support we were able to undertake our study here. So that for that we have to mention our gratitude, our thanks. So that is what we are showing. Acknowledgement. Some authors may acknowledge people, organization that contributed to the research, but did not meet the criteria for authorship. There we don't need, for example, sometimes for your field work, you are writing the paper. One of your close friends were accompanying you most of the time. So he or she has been giving you some help. You can mention his or her name there. So that is an acknowledgement, because their help made your study more easier. But they have not been involved in either in data analysis or paper writing. So you can mention their acknowledgement, their name as in the acknowledgement. Then appendices. Appendices can include supplementary material that is too lengthy or detailed for the main text, such as raw data or extended table. For example, in the main paper you may not be able to include certain thing. That you can mention as an appendix or another table after the main paper. So these are the optional section. There is no need you have to include these in the paper, in all paper. Only if it is relevant, you need to include them. So this is an idea regarding what are the main components in a research paper, how you should present a research paper in an effective manner.